You're listening to ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio, with your hosts Matthew C. Anderson and Joel Lindstrom. Hello, Matthew. How you doing?
Feeling very productive today. I had some plane time and got to hammer out a bunch of stuff without connecting to the internet connection there. That's always more frustrating than it's worth.
Yeah, sometimes that's good because there's very few places where you get a break. So sometimes I actually like that. But yeah, sometimes when you have stuff you got to get done, it is very frustrating.
Yeah,
it was really good when they first rolled it out, and now like everybody's using it, so it's terrible.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so I thought we should talk about email because that seems to be the big productivity suck, if you will, for a lot of people. I've been using an application called Rescue Time. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically it monitors how much time you use different applications. And by far, the one I use the most is email. And so I know you're big. You mentioned last time you're big on the inbox zero. And so what I find interesting is people, for some weird reason, view their email as like it's gold, like it's valuable. And so you would never hear anybody say, I've saved every voicemail I've received for the last 20 years, or even I have every text message anybody's ever sent me. But you'll see very frequently, you see people that have 10 years worth of email still in their inbox.
I love seeing tweets where people have a screen capture of one of their emails, and I see at the top that they have 9,000 unread emails in their inbox. It boggles the mind.
Right. So what do you think it is about email that has this weird effect on people?
So, I think there are a couple of things that feed into that. I've certainly had struggles with email in the past, and that's what's driven me to stay on top of my email as much as I do now. Part of it is if you're not aware of kind of what's been said in email traffic, there's this concern that the people that you then have another phone call with or have another email thread with, there's this almost expectation that you have all of that information that was previously submitted through email as a channel should just magically be top of mind for you, and it becomes this climb or in this slog through all of that information, and it puts it back on you as an individual, feeling like, well, you have to be responsible for knowing all of that. And while for me, I think it's healthy to understand what that email traffic is and commit some of that to memory. When you go back and objectively look at the email that you've had floating through your inbox over time, most of it is forgettable. I don't know. Is that the experience you have?
Yeah, it's my experience that if you went back and deleted all the email you got 2 weeks ago or more, or maybe even a week ago, what's the worst thing that could happen? Somebody sent you a question. By that, if you haven't answered it by then, they're not expecting a response. For me, there's things like I get, like, if you have a meeting come up and somebody sends you an agenda for the meeting and you lose that before the meeting, there are things like that that could happen. But for the most part, it's not as valuable as people think it will be. And I think it's more of a fear reflex that people are afraid they're going to miss out on something or somehow get in hot water over missing a conversation.
Yeah.
No, I also think it's the flood. You get so much of it that you just feel overwhelmed and give up and don't even try.
Yeah. Well, so I mentioned I'd been on the plane and unplugged earlier today. When I connected back to email, I had about 60 emails that were unread that I ended up going and processing through. One of the things that I do from a kind of a streamlining of the processing of those emails is I'll pretty often sort by the subject line. And I'll basically go to the most recent email in a specific subject line, that topic thread. Sorry about that noise. That topic thread that went throughout there. And if the end one or that last email looks like the topic is pretty well wrapped up, I might scan down through a little more of the content that was in there. But if we're looking good, I'm just going to mark all of it as read and archive it at that point. If it's still an open issue at the end of the thread that I'm looking at there, that's when, maybe I'm going to go back. One of the ones in the chain that grouping has an attachment on it. I might go peek at that attachment, but my time is really cut down because I'm not trying to look through all of that. Now, Outlook has a kind of an automated feature for trying to do that, the conversation view, which is an option that you can turn on. But I use a combination of both that as well as the sorting by the subject.
Yeah, conversation view is good, but it can get you in trouble sometimes because sometimes there is something in the chain, or sometimes it doesn't always work in the right order as well. I also Outlook has a cleanup feature where if you select a group of emails and right click and go clean up, it will delete all but the most recent email in a chain too. So that's one thing. If I'm going back after several days, I will sometimes do that.
Yeah, and I'm always hesitant on deleting a chain like that myself until my general process is I have one big folder called Archive, and I don't delete much of anything unless it's truly junk mail. It goes into that archive, and then I clean up the archive once every month. Sometimes that slips to every couple of months, but that way if I do have to reference back to it, it's easily searchable and it hasn't been lost to the ether.
The other thing I like to do is separate out the emails where I'm in the to line versus one where I'm not, and get the email sent directly to me. For one thing, that weeds out any kind of distribution group or whatever, and that way those are also the ones I'm most likely to have to respond to as well.
Absolutely. I do the same thing, man.
Now, I used to be more about actually deleting the emails, but since I have several projects that roll up to me, I do find value in having quick access to that history, especially when there's heavy traffic. So I do use subfolders, and then I use the CRM folder tracking option, so those automatically get tracked. And then what I'll do is when I go in, and I try not to check email, one thing that I'm trying to do is cut down the amount of time and frequency that I do check my email. But when I do my 3 or 4 times a day go into my email, I will search and sort by company name, and based on that glance through and see, is there anything I need to respond to, and any other thing that is just things I need to be aware of, read through it, drag it to the folders, and then periodically I will clear those folders out.
Yeah, it sounds like a great way to roll through that. I use, certainly as I'm tracking email and CRM, using that folder tracking is a great way to be able to get some of that in there. But another thing that I use that's more in a end around way related to CRM is I take a lot of that email where I know I want to have it as a reference point later, and I will add it to a OneNote notebook. Then that OneNote notebook is something that I'm sharing out through, kind of the OneDrive for Business platform, which, depending on your CRM and how you're set up there within the great world of dynamics we have, that may be connectable to the client as well. Right. But some of the kind of grouping capability that you have there, the ability to add, annotations and the search that you get within OneNote in that way is a great way to do that. There are also some add-ons for OneNote that I use, which I suspect we'll cover in another one of these sessions if we keep this up, that can really help even dig into that further if you use the OneNote platform in combination with your email.
Okay, so you mentioned a couple of different things. You mentioned tracking CRM, and if it's a business relevant thing, I do that as well. If it's something like for a project or for a client, having a OneNote notebook for that client that you maybe share out with other people. There's a third category that I don't think I've got a good system for yet, and that's things that are not business related, not project related, but are things, let's say the annual benefit summary or something about a company event coming up that's not a business thing I want to track in CRM, but it's something that I need to need to know or find for future reference. What are you doing for that stuff?
Yeah, so I even have within that category that you just described there, I have a couple of subcategories that I go to. What those are is, one is things that are quote unquote active. And by active, I mean something where I know I need to do something with this, even though it may be in the future. And then the other category is more, this is something that is more of a reference. I might want to find it later, might want to find it more easily, but it's not necessarily tracked to a specific client. So for that active category, I use literally a category flag, so those little colored icons that you can use if you right-click on your email. And I have one called Active. And then within Outlook, I have a search folder, which lets you define this predefined search where when you click that button, it's going to return any of the emails, in my case, where it has that active category that's associated with it. So when I need to get to those things, even if I've archived them or put it somewhere else in my, within the email system, I can get to it quickly. It does that search automatically for me.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things I'm doing is for that, especially things that need follow-up, that's one of these ways I use Wunderlist. So, for example, I've got people emailing me questions about CRM, and a lot of them spur like, that would be a great tip of the day. So I've got a CRM tip of the day category in Wunderlist, and I've got the CRM audio, same thing. That's the topic we should discuss, or other things like that, or a groceries category where my wife sends me a text or email about we need to pick up eggs. I put it in there. So yeah, finding a way to action it, to remember it, have action on it, find it when you need it. That's the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a Wunderlist user myself. I like some of the simplicity of Wunderlist compared to other options. I know a lot of people use things like a Trello, which is a little more project. There's the dog. Something like a Trello, which is a little more almost project management light focused, but it still has all those different to-dos. But the simplicity of Wunderlist, and now that Microsoft acquired Wunderlist and they're baking it deeper into things like the Outlook mobile app, the Outlook add-in for the Outlook desktop client, make that just kind of an easy one to be able to interact with.
And Flow too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's great. And one thing, talking about how people treat email like gold, I think we have it's easy to get this perverse notion that the busier you are, the more important you are. So you'll get in these weird conversations. I get 500 emails a day. Well, that's nothing. I get 700 emails a day. I get 1,000 emails a day, as if your value in life is how busy you are. And I think that's one of the points I got from Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week is, basically busyness doesn't equal productivity. And maybe the person who is less busy is just smarter about the way they work. So I think that's, and maybe the answer is finding ways to cut down on the amount of email you receive by training people in the way you interact with them. Instead of, hey, send me an email, it's call me up if you have a question.
Yeah, no, so I actually did a blog post on that maybe a little over a month ago on some of the strategies I use in just kind of having people understand the way I use email and what to expect from me. One of the keys to that is people know if they're reaching out to me, they're going to be able to get an answer from me, but depending on, kind of the circumstance I'm in, the reply that they may get to me is, hey, I see this request that you have here, but I'm literally not going to be able to do it until X time. And I'm very realistic about those expectations that I'm setting about when that's going to be. They may like it, they may not like it, they may push back. We have to have some back and forth. And of course, I deal with that. I'm not a complete taskmaster of, no, you're number 975 in line and I'm not going to talk to you until then. But being able to set that, you'd be surprised how often I come back with, I really don't have time for this right now. If I get you something by next Thursday, will that do? And surprisingly, it works pretty often.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big one of my philosophies is if somebody, especially one of my colleagues, inside our company sends me an email directly asking me something, they deserve a response. Now, that doesn't mean I respond that day, but I find a lot of times, even if I respond, say you email me on Thursday and I get back to you on Saturday morning or something, I get a lot of thanks for responding, because so many people, you just don't get a response. You send them an email and you don't get a response. So, but I think by setting the expectation that, I know if I email Joel, he's going to get back to me. It might not be 5 minutes from now, but I'm going to get a response. You get better responses when you ask them for something as well.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's a trust and a relationship that's built up in that kind of that email relationship that you have.
Yeah, definitely. So this has been great. I love hearing your thoughts on this, because I know you're very successful. You've written some blogs. Remind us what your blog is again.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at connectingthedata.com.
I think you've got some stuff about your inbox experiences and Inbox Zero and how you've achieved that.
Yeah, that's right. I don't try to claim it as anything earth-shattering, but I always think that, sharing some of those things, what's working for me, if people want to take a look at that and see if it might work for them too, all the better. So, always happy to share that stuff.
Yeah, I went on vacation recently to the Grand Canyon, and it was interesting because I intentionally disconnected my phone from my Exchange mailbox because I knew I would otherwise be tempted to log back in there. Mm-hmm. And plus, there are terrible connectivity there, so it kind of prevented me from doing it anyway. And that was an eye-opening experience, just to see, number one, I can go away for a week and things don't totally fall apart. And number two, being so obsessed about email is really kind of pointless, because if you don't respond to most emails within a few days, you'll still be okay.
Absolutely. Now, the real important thing is, did you enjoy your time at the Grand Canyon?
Yes, I did. I did not fall in, and I saw some beautiful wildlife, and it was fascinating because I knew there was the canyon, but there's a lot of historical stuff there too. There's several museums, geological museums, and just museums about life in the last several hundred years that I thought were just really interesting. I stayed at the park, rode the train, all kinds of cool stuff. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great.
So, anyway, well, hey, this is a lot of fun, and I think this is going to be a very interesting series, and appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Remind us how people can get you. What's your Twitter handle?
Yeah, absolutely. I am at MC Anderson on Twitter.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Joel.
This has been ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio. You can follow Matthew C. Anderson on his blog, connectingthedata.com, where you can download his ebook about 8 essential Skype for business hacks. You can also follow him on Twitter at MC Anderson. Joel Lindstrom is on Twitter at Joel Lindstrom. Do you have any feedback for us or questions about how to be more productive? Send an email to mail@prodcast.show or leave a comment on the CRM Audio Facebook page. You can subscribe to ProdCast at prodcast.show, iTunes, or subscribe to the CRM Audio feed to get this podcast and other series from CRM Audio. This is Joel Lindstrom. Until next time, remember to stay productive.